Now I know what some of you are thinking.
Now, I know what you're thinking.
Now, I know what you're all thinking.
I know what you're thinking.
Now, I know what a lot of you are probably thinking right now.
Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about something that I probably shouldn't be talking about, but whatever, I'm going to tell you guys about it anyway. As you can see, Funny Junk wants me to film this for you guys, so Funny Junk is for you, the Brony phenomenon. So, what is a Brony? Bronies are people, and part of a rising worldwide internet subculture. There are millions of them, they're really big on the internet, and started in late 2010. The average Brony, like the vast majority of them, are male 15 to 30-year-olds in high school or college. But what makes them really controversial and at times discriminated is that they're really devout fans of this one particular television show. That being My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. No, but hey, go back. Hey, I'm not kidding. There is a huge male-dominated fan base for this show. Literally millions of men that watch this show made for little girls. They call themselves bronies. Bros that like ponies. Bronies. I mean, it sounds a little bit creepy, doesn't it? I mean, millions of guys watching a show for little girls. I mean, are they gay? Are they pedophiles? Do they live in their mother's basements? No, they're just, normal guys living normal lives that just so happen to like a show made for little girls.
Follow the brony.
So the question is, why? And that's exactly what we're going to find out. Look what happens when we compare some of the best movies from the last 100 years to My Little Pony. Wizard of Oz, 8.2 from IMDb. Titanic, 7.5. Toy Story 3, 8.6. Star Wars, 8.8. King's Speech, 8.3. Ben-Hur, 8.2. Lord of the Rings, 8.8. Inception, 8.8. Forrest Gump, 8.7. Gone with the Wind, 8.2. Avatar, 8.1. Lion King, 8.3. My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, 8.9. Outshining all these movies. I mean, this right here, this says a lot. I mean, if this show is really that good enough to, outperform all of these other shows, I mean, it pretty much justifies more or less the fact that it has its own little cult following of Brony going on. And I have seen the show, and honestly, it's awesome. It's really, really awesome. And honestly, it deserves much more than an 8.9. Next. So the question is, what is My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and why are all these men liking it? It is the 4th generation of My Little Pony, and it's a unanimous opinion. It's much better made than the last previous series, because honestly, the last 3 suck, apparently. It's founded by Lauren Faust, and she and her team, they worked on many shows in the past. The people that work on this show, they're the best of the best. They have the best storyboard artists, the best animators, the best directors, everything. These people, they know what they're doing. Go back. Also, the show is moral-based. Every episode has its own little lesson that can be applied to everyday life. It's also meant to be family-friendly. Now, how many of you have younger brothers or cousins?
Me, Gilbert.
I do.
Me, pick me.
And how many of you are forced to watch, whatever crap they're watching on television? Yeah, and it's annoying, right?
No.
So Lauren Faust and her team was made aware of this problem, and they want to make a show that would be, universally appealing to everybody. So let's say you'd be babysitting your little cousin, and she'd be watching the show. You're gonna have a good time watching it. And also, the show has adult humor and games. No, kids, the ponies don't make sex jokes. But I mean, they do it in such a way. It's something like Toy Story, where you have to be older in order to appreciate all the jokes. And some of the themes of the show, the show alludes to, but it doesn't promote things such as racism, sadism, agnosticism, even alcoholism. And they do it in such a way so that little girls can get a feeling of what it is without actually knowing about it. It's a little bit subliminal, yes. And this is more of a personal opinion. The show gives me a feeling of inner peace and satisfaction. Whenever I feel sad or depressed, I just watch an episode of Bronies. But probably the most incredible aspect of what makes the show famous is its wonderful cast of characters. The main 6, I did not misspell that. And in your average girls cartoon, all the characters, they're living mysteriously happy lives. All they worry about is makeup and boys, but no. The characters of My Little Pony, they're much better than that. They're much more rounded, they're much more elaborate. You see the positive and negative aspects to them. They're very round, very relatable. And yeah, so I'm going to introduce you to them.
Okay, you have a question.
What does MLP stand for?
My Little Pony.
In my hometown, they use it to.
Me too, bro. Me too. Okay, you don't need to tell us.
Okay, so this is Twilight Sparkle, and she's the main protagonist of the series, and she is the best student of Princess Celestia, which is their goddess, so to speak. She starts out the series by being socially awkward, but she gets the hang of things and she becomes a friendly pony all around. She's very studious, very smart, very scholarly, but she tends to be a bit of a perfectionist, so she gets really anxious sometimes. But other than that, she's a humble but effective leader. This is Applejack, and she's very honest, very true. And she lives with a family of hardworking, conservative apple farmers. And she's very athletic, very competitive. But she's very kind, but sometimes she's really stubborn, hard-headed. She wants things to be done her way. This is Pinkie Pie. And she works at Cherokee Corner, the cake shop. She's very silly, very random. I don't know what she's looking at. And she's very outgoing and extroverted, but she tends to be a little bit insecure sometimes. And she's very famous for her songs, her laughter, and her parties. And she has defied the laws of physics many, many, many times throughout the show. I've lost count. This is Rarity. And she works with the fashion industry at Carousel Boutique. She's a fashion designer and a seamstress. Now, about most girls' cartoons, you actually see the pony. You actually see the characters in most girls' cartoons, buying dresses. Well, Rarity here, she actually makes a business out of selling dresses. She's very creative, but she's very spoiled, very dramatic, She makes a big deal about things when they don't go right. But she's very generous, and she's what you'd call the 1% of Ponyville. This is Rainbow Dash.
Oh yeah.
And her job, because she's a Pegasus, she maintains and controls the weather in Ponyville. She moves the clouds around. She's very loyal to her friends. She's very confident, but a little bit too confident, and because of that, she's really lazy. And when it comes to flight, she's really aerodynamically talented, but because of that, she likes to show it off. But she's pretty cool, so she deserves to.
She's at least 20% cooler than the other ponies.
Yes. And my personal favorite, Fluttershy.
Yeah.
Nice. She's very gentle, very quiet, very sweet. But as you can probably tell by her name, she's really shy and really fearful. But what makes her awesome is that every now and then throughout the show, she is courageous, defensive, and unpredictable. Like you don't expect much from her, and then bam, she is KOing a bear. Don't tone? Wait, hey Joe, can you press escape real quick? Escape. There's a video down there. Lower right. Lower right. These tabs. Hey, so I'm going to show you a 30-second scene. Because the characters are so different and so unique, it's really nice to see them interact. So right now I'm going to show you a 30-second scene with Rainbow Dash, the talky one, with Fluttershy, the quiet one. Wait, are the speakers on? Turn it back on.
Yes, and most importantly, so now that you know the elements of a good cheer, let's hear it. You're gonna cheer for me like that? Louder! Yay! Louder! Yay!
Oh, and on a side note, other than Fluttershy's mane, how many times do you see the color pink?
10.
Exactly. And that's another reason why men like this show so much. Like, they use the pink in such limited value, so the colors are very unisexually good. So now we know what and who makes the show so famous. Now we have to know how all this started. So when the show first came out, the reviews suddenly came pouring right in. And most of the critics, they gave the show positive thumbs up. They praised the animation, how it's directed, everything. They couldn't find anything wrong with it, except for one in particular. Hey, go back. So this self-proclaimed feminist critic called Kathleen Richard, she really bagged on the show. She was saying, things that didn't really make sense. She was saying how the show is a terrible role model for kids because it was implying that Rainbow Dash was a lesbian. And she also didn't like how there weren't any black ponies in the show, how the show wasn't really racially diverse. And then she noticed that there were indeed black ponies. See these two black ponies, Princess Celestia? So, and she said, and I quote, "It seems that the only black ponies in the television show My Little Ponies are slave ponies to the white pony overlord."
Any Hispanic pony?
There's an English pony. But other than that, she just kept on bagging on it. And when that happened, her review was posted on 4chan immediately after it came out, and the people from 4chan, they're saying how it was just being ignorant and stupid about it. And what else? Oh yeah, and when so people were actually curious as to see what was so bad about the show, but they started seeing the show and they actually liked it a lot. So they posted threads, pictures, topics, everything about it, making it exponentially popular on 4chan. And from there, they spread outwards to other content sharing websites such as Funny Junk, Reddit, Cheeseburger, Tumblr, you name it.
4chan's got a whole board now.
Yeah.
There's an entire pony board.
And from there, they made all these memes and fan art such as, "I don't always watch shows for little girls, but when I do, I prefer My Little Pony." It's like, "I love My Little Pony!" 16 and a half. Let's simply watch My Little Pony for a few minutes. Gee, who could that be?
George Bush.
And my personal favorite. So, in conclusion, the Brony phenomenon was something that nobody ever saw coming, yet Bronies exist as men all over the world, all mutually appreciative of a wonderful show that's well written, well animated, well directed, well made, that just so happens to be made for little girls. But there's a lesson to be learned from all this. This is the best instance of the phrase, "never judge a book by its cover." I mean, you see this for the first time, you think, it's lame, it's gay, and it's suckish. But believe me, I've seen practically every episode of the series. It is not lame, it is not gay, and it is most definitely not suckish. I highly encourage all you guys to see it, especially the men in this classroom, because it takes a true man to see the show. But other than that, I'm really happy that the casting crew, they're getting all the fame that they deserve, because this is really a truly wonderful show. Like honestly.
Okay, what channel? I mean, what should we?
Yes, where are you coming?
Great question.
Yeah.
It is shown on a channel called. It is shown on a channel called The Hub. If you have Time Warner Cable, it's channel 121. Or if you don't have The Hub, you can always see it on YouTube and on Netflix apparently, and iTunes. Any questions?
Talk about Derpy.
Derpy?
I have
Derpy
a question.
moves. Come on, man.
Why did you choose to
Don't
do
get
your
a
whole
Brony.
version on the Brony?
Why not?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Would you say that you're a Brony?
I'm a Brony.
Proud of.
I'm proud of.
I know.
Do girls want you? Do you have that?
Yeah, girls watch it.
Do you have the action figure?
Yeah, I have a little Fluttershy on my desk.
Do you have a what?
A Fluttershy on my desk.
Where is it? This one.
Bottom right.
Ah,
But do you want to set it up at all? Like, what are we looking for here, Ryan?
Let's see.
Or not?
When you come down to Ponyville, there'll be one thing waiting for you. There's plenty of pony around, flying fun and real excitement, with an adventure for every kind of pony. There's impressive ponies, perky ponies, punchy ponies, pretty ponies, peaceful ponies, and powerful ponies. Every kind of pony. Come on, every pony, don't
We're gonna see.
Sounds like an acid trip.
Okay. Alright, now that is called My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. It's a beautiful show. Bye, Rent. Okay. Alright, now the target audience is intended for, children who are probably generally at home during the day, who probably aren't at school yet. So probably, my 6-year-old sister watches it. And then there's also an unintended audience, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Alright, as you can see, there was lots of colors, there was lots going on. There was like a little My Little Pony theme song, My Little Pony. You also get the sense of the show itself by small little real-time, well not like real-time, but like actual clips from the show. You get to see, how much fun they're having, how much, all the adventure they're having, woo! And then Pinkie Pie is that pink little pony, and she's the icon of fun in that whole series. And I think that was really just there to really just draw in the kids to, we're having a great time, there's a party going on all the time, it's fun, just come watch it. And this little thing, it's always a party, come watch and have fun. Yeah, and then the voiceover is it was a woman talking, she was sounded like a mother, we're doing this is going on, there's fun things going on. And it was just, it makes you want to watch the show, because it's a nice woman telling you, I have a show for you. And really, parents really have the final say or generally have the final say in saying which shows their children watch, generally. So from that clip, you can tell that it's gonna keep a kid entertained. Kids love, bright, flashy colors. It's gonna keep them entertained. My mom puts on the show for my little brother Andrew, who's 3 years old. He just sits there all day, just watching My Little Pony. She can just go on and do her homework while he's entertained. And then, there is value in it. All these little kid shows have these, life lessons that they learn after each thing. All right, and the unintended audience are teenagers who are generally male and also older gentlemen, adults.
No way.
Why?
Brian, am I about to be disturbed?
I think you're gonna want to watch this afterwards.
Okay.
All right, but why would they be interested in it? This is a fan-created meme that somebody created, and this pretty much just explains it all. This is really it. It does. Based on the fact that ponies are awesome, I rest my case.
Right.
All right. The reason why they probably would have watched it to begin with is they have a small sibling that they had to babysit or something, and this happened to be on, so they I have to watch shows with my little siblings all the time.
Oh man, okay, keep going.
They end up having to watch the whole episode because they get sucked into it. They have to watch it with their small sibling, and they end up watching it. And you kind of almost get a feel for a secret society or cult in it, because they come on over, every pony. They have a secret language. Bro hoof is something that came up with where 2 dudes fist pound. Bro hoof. Yep. And probably the more deeper meaning is, there's so many different kinds of ponies in this, and they're all being accepted by one another. Teenagers want to be accepted, and maybe this is just their embodiment. There's so many ponies. You can try to fit yourself into one of the ponies because there's just so many personalities. There's the fun one, there's the fashionable one. Here's all the well, not all of them. They're missing Rarity, but mean, there's Fluttershy, who's a really shy one. Pinkie Pie, the party one.
Yeah.
Twilight, the dorky one, the really knowledgeable one. Rainbow Dash, the badass. And Applejack, the hillbilly.
Oh my.
There's also Rarity, the super. She's I guess you could say fashionable. She's the fashionista.
Okay, got it.
Again, there are many different kinds of ponies, so there's a chance that there's got to be at least one pony that you can relate to. It's easy to relate to something that is like you. You kind of want to watch that person. You kind of want to get to know them a little bit more, so they're more inclined to keep watching. I mean, come on, this is pretty badass. She's taking on a freaking, I forgot what this is called. A manticore, that's what it's called. I mean, that's about to rip her face off. Can you say that's not badass? So, I mean, there's a sense of danger. I mean, she's taking on a dragon. I mean, dragon.
Yeah.
I mean, there's dangers in adventure, and it's kind of like, and then each character has a flaw. There was a huge internet war about this character. His name was Derpy Hoops. I think it was also named Ditsy Doo. There's a huge thing going on with this character because of her eyes. Parents thought that they were making fun of retards.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We call them, we don't call them that.
You mentioned
Challenge.
mentally challenged.
Developmentally disabled.
Okay. Anyways, so there was a huge uproar about
The
this.
educational term would be cognitively impaired, but I don't know what.
But every character has a flaw, and it makes you kind of like love them. They're not perfect. They're not like all holy beings that can never do wrong. They get into fights all the time, and they fix it in the end. Happy lesson learned.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone has problems. Yeah. Again, there is a lot happening in this video, and it kind of like what just happened. We're probably inclined to do a little bit of research, and I actually typed in My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, and this is one of the pictures that was in the selection in the top 10 pictures that was there. And I think this is a great message because it's beautiful. It pretty much tells you what's going on. The show teaches you to just love and tolerate everybody until they're sick of it. All right, this is my little flow chart that I made.
Wow.
Of how teenagers started watching My Little Pony.
Secretly watches this show.
Yeah, don't do that. Okay, so the child watches the show. The child tells like their brother or their sister, this is the show. Watch it with me now, or I'll scream. And then they watch the whole episode. They're like, this is weird. I kind of want to keep watching. So like they watch it in secret, and they keep watching it, and then they realize that it's freaking awesome. And then they realize that this is pretty sweet. I can get into this. And then teens share the show with their friends, and then their friend they end up forcing their friend to watch it, and then it just starts over again. And that's how pretty much teens got invited to it, because most teenagers don't watch the children's shows or the children's channels like Hub, Boomerang, I don't know, Nickelodeon. Like most shows are generally shown during the day while everyone's at school, so they don't get into it. This is a separate thing, stages of Bronyism, when a friend is trying to get another friend to watch ponies. This is actually the stages of grief, but turned into My Little Pony. There is denial. You're like, no, this is really, for lack of a better word, really gay. Really. Rainbows everywhere, ponies everywhere. Okay, so they just totally deny it. They totally deny it. And they just get angry because their friends keep
Michael, you're
on
insane.
them. This happened to me. This happened to me too. This happened to everybody. They totally just are like, no. Hell no, I ain't watching this. And they get really angry because they're like, oh my gosh, just leave me alone. And they end up bargaining, fine, I'll watch the show. And then compression is kind of a common one because can you imagine yourself watching this? No. Denial. Once you start watching it, you're like, why am I watching this? Why? Why am I watching this? Why do I like this? Why? Most people still ask themselves even during this whole thing. Why do they watch it? They watch it because they have a connection to, one of the characters with a plot, which there isn't really a plot. It's just random events or adventures that they go on. So they're drawn to a character most likely that they have a relationship to, so they keep watching it, and then eventually there's acceptance. I have my little pony shirt on. I also have a pin.
It is a pony.
And nobody would have known anything about My Little Ponies without the commercial, unless they happen to see it just randomly through just watching this series, or watching the channel. And through that my little circle graph, through my little circle graph, you can see that they continue to thrive because people just keep on inviting other people into it. And the creators did a good job of getting kids to watch because there's just so many colors, there's so much going on. Kids are pretty easy to entertain. Questions? Oh my. Oh, ask some more. Challenges gender stereotypes by, the rainbows, the girly ponies, but they're pretty badass ponies. If you gotta admit.
I'm fried.
Yeah.
That's
pony overload.
it's a subculture.
Yeah.
Which yeah.
I'll show you.
So my question is, how long?
MyLittleBrony.com. Males who watch My Little Pony are called bronies.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
And there's tons and tons of these things that are fan created. It's created like a whole new kind of society, I guess it'd probably be the best way to say it.
I'm interested because this is the new nature of being a fan.
People are
it really
into this.
Yeah.
There's this one guy named Dusty. He's a very famous brony, and he's this motorcyclist. He's very hardcore metal.
Yeah.
And he watches My Little Pony. And he's a big, not big dude, but he's pretty muscular. He's got a huge mustache.
So not the typical
My
Little Pony.
It's just challenging gender stereotypes.
I see what you're showing me. This is good stuff. I think we do have to move on. Excellent. Yeah, a little tour through a subculture. That was neat. Let's take a break now.
I'm doing my presentation on a certain cartoon that maybe you have heard or not heard of, you might not be expecting to be talking about, and that is My Little Pony. Friendship is Magic. I'm just going to be explaining the history of the show and how it got popular among the demographic that doesn't seem like it would be a demographic which is adult males aged 18 and up. So, start with the history. Now, My Little Pony started out as a toy franchise around the 1980s, and it was acquired by a company called Hasbro. And to promote this toy line, they started doing animations from the 1980s up until about 2009, and all these animations were really, really, really bad. They just sucked really bad. So the show was just in the gutter. So they wanted to reboot the whole franchise to appeal to a more modern generation of girls and reboot the franchise. So that's when they hired Lauren Faust. Now, Lauren Faust is known for doing animations such as Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and the Powerpuff Girls, which is also an animation that is supposed to be for little girls, but they appeal to a male demographic. And so she pitched her idea for My Little Pony by giving characters diverse personalities and diverse characteristics that weren't shown in earlier animations, and giving plot lines that dealt with moral values. And the company really liked her idea. So they hired her as executive producer of the show, and so she got all this money and everything and started hiring famous animators. When Craig McCracken which is her husband and is also the creator of Foster Home for Imaginary Friends and Powerpuff Girls. And this whole process took about a year until the show premiered on October 10th, 2010 on the channel called The Hub, which shows other cartoons. And when the show first premiered, it got pretty good reviews from other critics, like commenting about the plot and the characters and how good it was. But there were also some critics that criticized the show rather harshly, one of them being a woman named Kathleen Richter. Kathleen Richter she's a feminist article news writer, and she made an article that said the show was sexist and racist. She said one of the characters, this one, Rainbow Dash, because of her rainbow color and her tomboy nature, gave the impression that all tomboys were lesbians. And she also commented because of a white leader pony and darker colored guards that gave the impression of white supremacy and racism.
Wow, really? Oh my gosh.
One post made a rebuttal of all these claims, saying they were just stupid, like how color was never an indication of a race of a pony, and that's just dumb. And how saying tomboyish nature of a certain character and define that as a lesbian sexual orientation is very degrading to lesbians and straight women. And now there was another article about the show as well by a guy named Amina Amidi, and now this one was more about how the show was just about how it was just using it to promote the franchise, the toy line, and all that stuff, and how animation was just promoting big business and all that. And that leads to the next level about how the show gained popularity. Now, because of this article, it gained attention on a website called 4chan, which is a forum-based website that talks about different kind of categories of different kinds of things. And one of them being a cartoon board. Now, the people of the cartoon board noticed this article and thought it was really interesting, and they gained interest in the show. And so they took a look at the show, and they actually thought it was pretty good. So they started commenting about the show on the website and all that. And there are also people on the 4chan website that really hated the show and mocked and criticized the people who liked the show, and this whole internet war thing on the board was going on, which led to the moderators of the website having to ban anything doing with My Little Pony for a little bit, but it eventually went back up. Now, the male demographic fans that watch the show are known as Bronies, which is a combination of the word bro and pony just put together. And so, you would think that the creators and the production team of the show would think like white or adult male is watching the show. That's kind of weird. This show is kind of meant for 6-year-old girls. But instead, they actually supported them and actually appreciated them having an open eye of a little kid show and saying that, and promoting the idea that if the show is good, then there should be no demographic at all. And so they started putting in references in the show that would appeal to an adult audience. One of them being of The Big Lebowski, which is a rated R movie, of making pony versions look kind of like the characters in Big Lebowski. And while doing these references, they also put in references to different pony characters that the fandom has influenced in the show. One of them being this pony. She was only in for an episode for about 7 seconds, but the fandom quickly grew attached to her because of her distinct look, and so they gave her the nickname Vinyl Scratch and a DJ name called DJ Pone 3. And so the production team noticed this and they adopted the name DJ Pone 3, and now it's a canonized name, which means it's just a legit name for the pony. And now there's another pony that is famous throughout the fandom, but is not really canonized yet, is Dr. Hooves. Now, nicknamed Dr. Hooves because of the way he looks like David Tennant's character of the person in Doctor Who, and because of this thing called a cutie mark, which is an hourglass, which suggests that he's a keeper of time. And then there's another background pony that became really famous and is kind of like a mascot throughout the whole fandom, is Derpy Hooves. Now, Hooves got its name because of an overlooked animator joke in the first episode of the series, had cross eyes and a scrunched up nose. Kind of like, so, the fandom really thought this was really funny and they grew attached to it, and the production team noticed this, and so they added this like sort of like an Easter egg sort of character in future episodes. And this happened until about episode 14 of the second season, and then they changed the character in one episode. And I have a little clip that shows what happened. I'm just gonna start it. Oh wait.
Where's the clip?
It's through YouTube.
Go for it. I just didn't know it was already saved or not.
Yeah, there you go. Make sure the volume's up on your speaker, left-hand side.
Careful, Derpy! I'm gonna do way more damage than you've already done. I just don't know what went wrong. Yeah, it's a mystery. Nice work, Rainbow Dad!
So you can see, like, they gave her derpy eyes and a kind of a derpy voice and quasi attitude, and the Brony community thought this was really funny. They were really appreciative of the producers for actually doing this. There are also some people of the fandom who thought this was really offensive, mostly to mentally challenged people. So, to appease those fans too, they altered the episode a little bit. They altered the episode a little bit to where she changed her voice and her look a little bit. And I'll show a little clip that shows that. It's going to open up. Or not. Okay, I'll just keep going on then. But instead, like, they changed her voice and they changed her eyelids so they were normal and she gave like a more girlish voice. And the Brony community thought this was appalling, so they made like petitions making like Save Derby and like all that. And so they're continuing like assuring that this wouldn't happen in future episodes unless you can say. Now, in conclusion, the Brony community is growing strong, and so is the show. It is in production of its 3rd season, and I think you should give the show a try before judging it, because judging a show just by like not watching it essentially is kind of prejudice, and I don't think you should make that kind of judgment until you actually see the show. So that's it.
Is tutor to the most powerful being in existence, namely Princess Celestia. Princess Celestia thinks Twilight spends way too much time in the library reading books about magic, and so she sends her to Ponyville to prepare for the Summer Sun celebration and to get some friends. But while they're... scroll. Things messing it up. That's Princess Celestia. But while there, Princess Celestia's sister, that had been imprisoned in the moon for about 1,000 years, escapes, and then Twilight and her new friends need to revert her to back in another previous form, but that's not important. Yeah, that's Nightmare Moon, and then those are her friends. So the main characters are as follows. First of all, there's Twilight Sparkle. She's very book smart, but socially inept unicorn. Next up is Applejack. She's an honest, hard-working apple farmer.
Can't hear you. Let's
After that is Rary, the sometimes whiny fashionista that actually owns the local dress shop in Ponyville.
Exile. I guess technically I'd have to move away to live in exile. Where would I go? And what would I pack? Oh, it took me forever to do all of that packing. What are you supposed to pack when you go into exile? You're supposed to pack wood?
After that is Rainbow Dash. She's kind of a headstrong and stubborn Pegasus that's obsessed with speed flying and tricks and whatnot.
It needs to be about 20% cooler.
Then following that is Pinkie Pie, but there are literally no words to describe Pinkie Pie, so you're just going to have to watch these clips.
But Rary told me.
And then lastly is my personal favorite, Fluttershy, the kind, nature-loving recluse, and because she's my favorite, she got the longest clip.
Now, what have we learned? Lots of control. Good. Screaming and hollering. Yes. And most importantly, passion. Great. So now that you know the elements of a good cheer, let's hear one. Yay. Ugh, you're gonna cheer for me like that? Louder. Yay. Louder. Yay. Louder. Yay. Too loud.
And then lastly is Twilight's personal assistant, Spike Magic Dragon.
Extra sprinkles.
But he's not as important, so we'll move on. Second question you had earlier, why is the guy talking about this? This show is unique because of a few main characteristics, which are mostly because the people that make this show actually care about making a good show. You can tell just from the quality of it that they've looked into every single detail to make sure that it's a worthwhile thing to watch. It's very unique for any show nowadays to actually have that kind of care about it. Next, the characters are consistent. They stay the same from episode to episode. They're not just faces with interchangeable personalities like other children's shows may be. And lastly, there's a very unique thing about it where it's actually a cartoon. It's very effective at bringing back the classic Looney Tunes style of unrealism, which is very refreshing, as most cartoons nowadays seem to be trying to be as realistic as possible, which doesn't make sense. You're not watching something for realism if it's a cartoon. And the best example is this clip right here.
I guess I do.
The whole show's not like that, though, just in case you're wondering. And the last thing is, that's a phrase I came up with myself, O Celestia, the music. The music is really amazing. It's mostly, the music is done by William Anderson and the songs are written by Dan Ingram, but between the two of them, they're like the next John Williams. It really is very, very good music. I'm not kidding about that. Next thing is the very extremely large fan base that this show has. As I mentioned, there's people all over the world. Each individual episode has got at least over 1 million views in a relatively short time. First of all, most of the reason that this show is actually good is because of Lauren Faust. She's the executive producer of the show. She's been actually quoted to say that her purpose in making this show was to make something that could be enjoyed by both children and their parents, which I believe she succeeded in every single aspect. She's very famed for her work on a variety of cartoon shows, such as, but to name a few, Powerpuff Girls and Foster Home for Imaginary Friends. And next is that the fan base has come up with a term that they call themselves, and that is the term of Brony, which is a contraction of bro and pony, which is a name typically given to the male viewers or fans of the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic show or franchise, typical age 13 to 30. And I'm not making that up. There is a demographic on YouTube that shows that, or things on YouTube that tell the top 3 age groups of people that watch the show. And this is the top age group for the first episode. First is males 18 to 24, then males 13 to 17, then males 25 to 34. And as I said, it's not just a few people. There's over 1 million views for every single episode. And so that shows that there's something below the surface, and if you don't believe anything else. Next is that the fan base, while mostly online, has a very strong community between the fans of the site. They've made a whole variety of sites, such as Equestria Daily, Pony Chan, Flank Book, and hundreds of others by now, which I don't have time to tell you all of them. But nextly, there's lots of fan-made things that people work on, things such as projects, games, videos, animations, whatever, out of pure love for the show itself, which is, there was a comment on a YouTube video I saw where one person said he hadn't seen a show get so much fanfare since the Animaniacs. And the most popular version of fan-made objects is that of PMVs or pony music videos. And I wish my editor had worked better, but this is my top 3 favorites of the ones I could get to work. The first is pretty obvious.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality.
The next is the Gleecast version of Friday. And last is Hero by Skillet. This is most of the reason why men like it so much. And I really wish I could show you more, but time is limiting me to move on to my final statement. And the main thing I'm saying is that no matter what I said, I cannot portray this show accurately. It's something that is so unique. I can't, no matter how much time I had, I couldn't tell you everything about it. And the best way to describe what I'm saying is actually a quote from the show. Twilight Sparkle is writing a letter to Princess Celestia, as she does at the end of every episode. But she's saying, "Dear Princess Celestia, I am happy to report that I now realize that there are wonderful things in this world that you can't explain, but that doesn't necessarily make them any less true. It just means you need to choose to believe in them, and sometimes it takes a friend to show you the way." And meanwhile, I really say that I'm not trying to make you become avid fans of the show or even normal fans of the show. I'm just trying to get the truth out there about the show, that it's actually a very worthwhile thing to watch. And that is all I have in my presentation itself. And this is just a sample of the music, but are there any questions or comments anyone has?
You watch it online, you said?
Yeah, all the episodes are on YouTube. They actually just let them on YouTube just because they get ridiculous amounts of free advertising from it. It's worked well for them. You like it?
I was thinking the same way.
Yeah. Anybody else? Comments, questions, anything? I know you have them. Nobody could get through that without thinking something. Nobody wants to say anything? You watch it? What? My friend introduced it to me. I overheard him talking about it to another friend, and he's like, "Did you see Pinkie Pie break the fourth wall?" I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he told me about it, and then I watched it later at his house that week. I was really surprised, though. Well, that's all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time.
Who's next?
So, my second research paper was on basically analyzing medieval economies, and then how they would be affected by the introduction of fantasy elements, traditional magic, mythical beasts and stuff like that, and basically how the very rigid social structure would be altered by that. What?
So is it about medieval economies?
Yeah, partly about that. Just a basic analysis of it.
Fanciful medieval.
Yeah.
Economies.
What the hell is wrong
Oh no.
I see some of the later pictures. I'm concerned.
Maybe it should be. So some initial assumptions about medieval economies: very rigid hierarchy, three basic social strata, which I'll get into later. Significantly lower levels of production than we see today. One of the interesting facts I found was that it was considered a good year to have the equivalent of an acre. That wasn't their unit of measure for land, but for an acre of land to produce 10 bushels of grain. And in 2002, the U.S. Department of Agriculture found that the average grain output for corn yields in the United States was 186 bushels per acre. So a good year is about 1/18 the amount of an average year for modern technology and modern farming techniques. So it took a lot more energy to be able to produce the amount of food that was necessary. And I also had a general time frame. I just took, it was essentially like I was taking a random sampling of a year, which of an occurrence within a medieval economy between the 5th century AD after the fall of the Roman Empire to the 16th century with the Renaissance, which was just a major cultural change in Europe. And I'm also limiting my purview to Europe, because obviously there's a lot more mythologies and different economic structures that existed during that time frame, most notably in China, where they were just about as advanced as industrial Europe was in the 19th century, but I'm limiting it to Europe. The Malthusian theory is a very important thing to look at when you're looking at medieval economies, because it basically predicts that in any medieval setting, there is going to be a limit for both population growth and for wage growth for average workers. You're going to see basically a no matter how good technology gets within the confines of the Conan and medieval era, the fact that the very strict social hierarchy and the fact that surpluses and profits generally go only to a small group of people, you're only going to see a certain amount of wages going to laborers, and so it's going to peak out at a certain point, because anything beyond that is just increasing prices, and they would need more money to be able to buy the basic necessities of life, so they would counteract each other. And this was basically assumed to be true through some mathematical rigor and through just some anecdotal evidence. So I just took it as basically being truth, even if it might not necessarily be. So the three basic social classes in medieval Europe was, of course, the lords, the highest social strata. They owned the land, they owned the capital. They were the benefactors of the surplus from labor. Any excess bushels that they had after feeding their workers, be they serfs, slaves, or if they're actually just wage workers, or from any manufacturing processes from their the raw materials that come from the land that they own, they solely benefit from it. And they are very strict. It's a very strict, very enclosed, self-sustaining class, just because all the wealth and all of the property is inherited and passed along familial lines. Usually, to the eldest son, but maybe a brother, maybe a cousin, but it will be a close familial tie. The next one that was important were the guilds, the artisans, the trained workers, basically the equivalent to skilled laborers. They were very similar to trade unions in that they had bylaws, they had very specific trade, very specific activity that they participated in. They would be defined as being productive because they would make, they'd make the clothing, they'd figure out how to make the bread, they'd be the merchants. Those were the most common and most prolific unions, were the merchant guilds. There was some social mobility because if you joined a guild, if you did well in it, and if you moved up the ranks, you could become a very prominent figure in government and in economic activities, and so you could actually become pretty important. Of course, the most common were peasants. They were the equivalent to what we'd probably call unskilled laborers, usually farmers. They'd be tied to the land for the most part. They'd be serfs, or they'd be low-wage workers. They'd oftentimes just be paid simply in the bushels of grain for which they picked. They would only get enough to sustain themselves and their families, and pretty much nothing beyond that. They'd be called productive just because they are, extracting food, they're getting raw materials, they're getting the stuff that's necessary, but for the most part, they're just the huge mass of people who get the food and make sure we can all get it. So, insert the metrics. So first I have to define what I mean by fantasy. I mean physical effects outside of natural law, something that can't be explained or has no connection to chemistry, physics at all. Sentient non-human life. You see here a dragon, a baby dragon, and he is not human, obviously. But he is intelligent. He can converse with other humans. He has his own maybe species agenda. Maybe we're talking about tree men. Maybe we're talking about wizards. Anything of that type. Gods, with the emphasis on the lowercase g, essentially beings with power. They have influence over magic, over natural law, and can be interacted with, and their influence is tangible, but they are not unlimited power. They are not omniscient. They are not omnipresent. They are not omnipotent. And though my actual research paper was more broad than this, and I looked at a more general look at fantasy in this little presentation, I have a very special case study. It's the new My Little Pony Friendship is Magic show. And the question has to be asked, of course, great show or greatest show. So, what's the equestrian economy like? Now, Equestria is the nation for which ponies live. It's agrarian, primarily farmers. It's de facto egalitarian because all ponies exist basically on equal standing. They can converse with each other. There's no strict laws for them acting, for them having social mobility. There's nothing exactly like that, but they act as if they are equals, so it's nothing on the books, and it's nothing by royal decree, but it's something that exists. The free market, they have to take in their wares, whatever their special skill is, they have to use that to create a product or a good that they have to sell in the free market for a profit. They have a common currency called the bit, and they have a very limited government because of the fact that they have a cooperative nature. They don't really need much in terms of oversight. There's very little taxes. There's very little violence. Generally, it's a medieval, semi-industrial society. There's some machinations. There's some signs of advancing technology, but for the most part, it's pretty much medieval. It's magic as hell, and the primary assumption you have to make is that friendship is magic, and they're interchangeable, as friendship produces a magical reaction, which has tangible effects within the world.
Is there capital accumulation?
Most certainly. Now there are three types, just like in the real world. One of them is unicorns. They are magic users. They are the only type of magic users. All the unicorns have the ability to use telekinesis, moving objects with thoughts without making physical contact, and usually one special form of magic which is specific to them. They're generally the rich nobles. They're the leisure class. They live in the cities. They have a lot of money. And the interesting thing about ponies is that they generally don't wear clothing. They don't need to. There's no social standards for that. But if they do, it is invariably a status symbol. It's something to show wealth, position, and affinity for fashion and for cultural standards. And so, if a pony is wearing clothing of any type, it just connotates that they are rich and they are well-to-do. The other type are Pegasus ponies. They can fly, obviously. And another very important aspect of them is that they have the ability to walk on clouds. And due to the fact that they can do that, they can also manipulate clouds. So they can manipulate and manufacture weather. This is a very important aspect due to the fact that weather, since it's an agrarian society, the ability to control weather is a high-demand, high-paying position that Pegasus can have. If they're in, say, a city primarily composed of unicorns and earth ponies, they can have a position of a weather pony, and it can be a very, very prestigious position. And they have their own cities, which are made out of clouds. They have their own manufacturing facilities in the lower right-hand corner. That is a weather factory. And in the bottom left is the largest Pegasus city called Cloudsdale. It's a Clydesdale. Everything's a joke. And right there at the top right is one of the main characters, Rainbow Dash, and she's the fastest flyer in all of Equestria, and she's damn proud of that fact. The most common are earth ponies. They're basically akin to normal horses. They have superior physical traits. They're either very fast, very strong, very dexterous, very agile. They're generally laborers and farmers. It's important to know, it's kind of difficult to tell, but the top right are two ponies. They're wearing their cute little conductor hats, and they're actually hooked up to that train you see at the bottom there. It is literally 4 ponies drawing a train. They're so strong that they have the ability to do that without needing an actual steam engine to draw the train. They can do this for several hours at a time. They are most certainly a productive class. They are the ones that, like I said, do most of the farming, most of the manual labor. So it's a friendship-based economy as magic. Friendship is magic, and as stated, unicorns are the only ones that can use magic. They can do the work of several non-magical ponies cumulatively. They have the ability to manipulate objects as if they had fingers, and they can also hold several objects at the same time. The specific case study I'm going to show this with are two of the main characters shown here: Applejack on the left and Twilight Sparkle on the right. Twilight Sparkle is the best pony, by the way. So, apple harvesting. This is the earth pony style of harvesting apples. It's called apple bucking. They pick the tree, buckets set up beneath, and they land in it. Now, Applejack should be noted as being much better at this than the average pony. Most ponies need 5 or 6 kicks to get all the apples off. Applejack usually only needs 1 or 2. It's a very refined technique that she's been working on her entire life. As you can see, she can do about 1 tree at a time. She has to set up the buckets, then she has to take the buckets to a cart which is set up nearby so she can transport the apples back for storage and taking them back to market. This is Twilight Sparkle and how she does it. She's using her telekinesis to remove the apples from about 20 trees at the same time and then immediately transporting them over to the cart. I couldn't find a good little animated GIF for it, but can pretty much tell. She is doing, in the same amount of time, the work of about 20 Earth ponies at the same time. She has significantly higher production capacity than Applejack does. And it should be noted, of course, that Twilight Sparkle is a once-in-a-generation pony that's probably one of the top 3 magic users in the world and is incredibly important in that capacity. But it is, of course, worth noting that any unicorn could take the apples probably off 2 or 3 trees and then do the work of several Earth ponies simultaneously. So it's worth looking at the production possibilities from Fair for Twilight Sparkle and Applejack, where the vertical axis is apples harvested, the horizontal axis is friendships magicked, or the unit of friendship, basically social interaction and the creation of the magical element that is friendship. If they did nothing but harvest apples, Twilight would be able to produce significantly more than Applejack could. In one a case study instance, or episode, if you will, Applejack had to harvest all the apples on the farm by herself because her brother, who normally does a lot of the work around the farm, got injured. She was unable. She didn't have the capacity to be able to harvest all the apples by herself, and due to her stubborn nature, was refused to ask help from her friends. And eventually, collapsing from both a combination of exhaustion and a concussion to the head, which made her hallucinate very badly, she was willing to accept the help from her friends and harvest all the apples. Twilight Sparkle can spend time socializing with her friends, creating magic, but still be able to harvest more apples than Applejack, since it takes significantly less effort. Now, if they spend all their time socializing and being friendly and creating the magic of friendship, then neither of them would harvest any apples, but they both have the same capacity for friendship. So they would meet at the same point along that axis. But you could see that any other point, Twilight is going to be able to harvest more apples than Applejack for any given amount. So they would become a separate class. Magic users would become this higher magical class that would be so much more productive than the average Earth pony that they could be paid more, but still decrease the cost of total labor due to their high production. And this would possibly lead to a even broader stratification of a society, even beyond like nobles and peasants. You have, nobles consider themselves higher than peasants, but in this one, unicorns probably wouldn't even need to acknowledge the existence of Earth ponies. They wouldn't have to even care about their well-being or their, virtuosity, whether or not they're religious or anything. They'd just not care about them in the least. But what's important to note is that the Pegasus ponies have developed technology. They manufacture. They have a society that is separate, proprietary, the London Cloud Cities, that are separate from and can maintain a higher standard of life due to the fact that they can stay competitive in that realm. The only way that Earth ponies could even possibly stay competitive is if society places a high value on the hard physical labor, such as heavy lifting, train operators, and the like, and which is the only thing that Earth ponies can do in any capacity better than unicorns. So externalities, namely mother effing dragons. They're jerks, and sometimes they'll take naps where you ride over your town, and they will emit smoke that will blanket it in darkness for a century. And you don't want that, but oftentimes they can be reasoned with, which is nice. So essentially, the Peruvian tax was the transaction cost of having to go negotiate with the dragon that he take his gold, his bed elsewhere, and he sleep where he wouldn't be disturbing any ponies. There are other creatures, of course, various manticores and basilisks and griffins who are jerks universally. But it all basically comes down to being able to harness friendship. And of course, again, it's very important to note that all these concepts can apply because Equestria is a free market society with a low or non-existent tax rate. You have open market negotiations, a common currency, and many choices in the market where you can travel to different vendors, you can look at different prices, and you can approach equilibrium. So an open labor market where ponies have to compete with each other based on productivity and demands of pay is very applicable to the scenario. So whether or not it's a positive or a negative. Gains, overall, you have more productivity, more availability of goods because of the nature of the unicorns being very productive and being able to produce for themselves and for the rest of society. This is displayed, of course, by the existence of a leisure class. Losses, you have stratifications, social gaps, conflicts between the technological and the capital, the magic, growth. You have Pegasus ponies looking for this steam-powered technology, this manufacturing, and you have unicorns trying to use this simple magic, and you would have different cultural standards coming about because of that. Is there a net gain? I would think so, just because of the incredible high productivity of the magic user. But again, there are positives and negatives to everything. So are there any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Was Twilight Sparkle a magical pony or a unicorn?
Unicorn.
Ah, okay.
Only unicorns can use magic.
Oh, yeah. And secondly, if they don't need steam engines because they can drag stuff, why were they dragging a steam engine?
It's actually a storage facility, basically for food and for.
But they have a locomotive on the front of it.
It's just.
Unfortunately, it's not working. Well, you can watch episodes. They are in YouTube, so you can check the series. Just like My Little Pony, this is Magic, and you can find all the episodes. Hasbro hasn't been taking an aggressive stance against copyright infringement. In fact, they are very they embrace this kind of free advertisement. So this is one of the reasons why the internet community has got the pony fever. So well, other viewers and internet followers, who and why they watch this cartoon? Well, I try to pinpoint some characteristics from this group. Well, first, we have the target audience parents. Of course, they are going to watch what their kids are watching in the television. And next, animation and fantasy fans who were very interested when they hear the name of Lauren Faust attached to this project. Of course, Lauren Faust and My Little Pony was a low value cartoon with a high-profile producer and animator. It was interesting. 80s and 90s kids, that's people who grown in Saturday mornings watching cartoons. So they are probably in their 20s, 30s, 40s probably. So there is a nostalgia factor also. People with strong aligned social interaction, that is, for example, me, I was introduced to the series by an online friend. She lives in the United States, and she was talking. It was random, and I simply followed her links, and that was it. The New Sincerity movement, who is opposed to cynicism, it's a new way to watch TV. It's very recent. It's the contrary of the postmodern irony. Watch things for the irony factor. I watch it because it's lame. In this case, the like of the show is very sincere. The people is really liking the show. It's really following the message, and the message is positive, and it even has influence. The influence has been positive to their lives. And the remix and mimetic culture. Remix culture is about mixing elements from one thing to another. For example, there have been mixes of pony imagery with movie trailers, and the most impactant case has been the company Hub, they acquired some rights to Katy Perry's song, California Girls, and they remixed it to a new song they called Equestria Girls, and it's really hilarious. And memetic culture is, well, it's based on memes. A meme is an idea, behavior, or style that switches from person to person within a culture. So we have lots of ideas, crazy ideas, and where they start to repeat, they pick interest across the online culture. Many are inside jokes, many are likely they are too easy to understand, but some others are obscure reference. And well, online has had a big impact, but in the real world there hasn't been a big impact in the case of merchandise. Hasbro is still marketing toys. Well, it's their objective, but a lot of fans feel that there is a huge niche market in this area. One of the first companies that launched products, licensed products, was a website t-shirt manufacturer, Willow Pine, and they launched two contests. There are already two contests, and for example, this one was one of the winning contests. I submitted one of mine. This one. And they awarded monetary prize. For the second round is 7 bigger. It's 3 times bigger. I think it's $100. Well, this fandom is really rich with creativity. It's teeming with it. So the probability of getting a good idea and a very colorful one is very high, and it has lasted more than 1 year and it's still ongoing, so it's not a fact. It's not something that it has just come and it's going to live just like it came. So, well, I think it is very interesting. It was not expected that a show for little girls and boys was going to have this impact. So, yes, online, offline, and people's life. So, that's all. If you have any questions, thank you.
I didn't understand the relation that you have with that cartoon.
Well, myself, I'm a fan of the cartoon. So, one of the things that attracted me to the cartoon was the quality of the animation. It's very expressive. It's a shame that we couldn't see a small sample, because you can hear a very fluid animation. It's flash, but it's not the lazy flash that you are used to see. It has effects, and it's reinforced with a voice acting that is very powerful. It's very emotional. At least in the English version, it is very, very good. The Spanish version that well, it's primarily this Monday, so it was good day. I didn't miss it. It was okay. It was an okay job. I think that maybe in some months after it starts to pick up, or an open channel, an open broadcast channel picks the series, it's going to ramp up in popularity at the same level or even more than Powerpuff Girls. Some people even say that it's the new SpongeBob SquarePants.
So this cartoon is only online?
It's in the cable television channel, and it's only available in United States and in Canada. It's a pay per view channel, so it has a small audience. But thanks to the internet, the audience has been increased largely by millions. So it's interesting. That's why Hasbro and Hub hasn't been taking down the channels, the videos on YouTube. Maybe when they start selling DVDs or Blu-rays, legal ways for people to acquire the series, perhaps they're going to start to take down the video.
You mentioned something about a meme, but I didn't understand because I have read and see some memes that are like very simple drawings and with different expressions that are hilarious, but most of them are like rude or more about sex and
sexual.
Yes,
Yes,
I don't know.
That's the adult aspect that has been included in the series. For example, the troll.
Yes.
Yes.
Or forever alone.
Forever alone.
Her face.
Yes. Or Nyanka, if you have heard that about that. You have seen Nyanka. It's a cat. It's flying. It's spreading a rainbow, and full rainbow that has a rainbow. So there they dresses her as Nyanka, but she doesn't act. But for example, Celestia, it's because she sometimes is playful. She sometimes is prank or acts in a way that couldn't have caused many problems, but at the end it caused